How do we cultivate community in a culture that thrives on our separation? Hello. Okay. Welcome to Passionfroot, where we pursue lives of purpose together. I'm coming to you today with allergies. This is like the second video that I've had allergies through. I was gonna film this yesterday, but I was sounding like a clothespin was over my nose. Like, it was really bad, and I hope that it doesn't get that way as we progress throughout this video. But right now I can breathe a little bit easier. Today I'd like to talk about something that has been on my mind a lot recently, and that is community. I'm on a journey to learn more about it and also strengthen it more in my life and prioritize it more. And so the following in this video is going to be my thoughts on it so far, what I've learned about it so far. And I've been really into video essays lately, and it shows. So this is not sponsored or anything, but these Vicks tissues have been saving my life. As someone who grew up in the Western Hemisphere, I have grown up in a culture that values individualism and self-actualization, achieving financial and material success, and of course, the Disney message to follow your dreams. Now, don't get me wrong, I actually do appreciate these messages to a certain extent. I am thankful for the empowerment I have felt, believing that anything is possible. Messages that tell me to follow my dreams are probably partially responsible for me being an artist today, and I am grateful to have been taught that I can achieve almost anything I set my mind to. And yet, we as humans in a society do tend to overdo things sometimes. And I think there needs to be a little bit more nuance in this message of individualism. Our emphasis on the success of an individual has made us too focused on the individual. Can you believe it? And we don't have to look too far to see the negative side effects of such a culture. Though we are technically more connected with more people than we ever have been before, way too many people experience loneliness. I know we've all heard this spiel before, so I'm not going to dwell on the subject too much, but I did do a brief Google search, and I discovered that according to some studies, it's not the older people experiencing the most loneliness, like we might assume. It's actually the younger people, the people with the most access to the rest of the world. We don't know how to talk to each other in honest, deep, and meaningful ways. And I know I'm generalizing here, and this won't apply to everybody or to every situation, but I think we can all at least agree that we certainly don't know how to disagree with each other. And much of that goes back to communication and empathy. And lastly, we run ourselves ragged trying to achieve our dreams because the only one we can rely on is ourselves. We're too busy for deep conversations and community building because we have dreams to pursue, and we're told that that's where we'll find happiness. But community, healthy community, which takes work to build and sustain, is where we'll find happiness and fulfillment. Support as we pursue our passions, accountability as we learn how to be better humans to each other. Community, and also nature for that matter, but that's another video, is where we'll find the depth and substance of life. But to truly partake of these gifts, these essentials, I would say, requires us to slow down. There came a time in my life, shortly after graduating college, where I realized that a shift was taking place in my relationships. And I needed to start being more intentional about them if I wanted to have the deep, meaningful relationships that significantly lessen loneliness. In college, maintaining friendships came relatively easy because we were all there sharing the same general experience in the same physical place. During that time, keeping up with friendships wasn't something I had to actively think about. But leaving college, of course, changes that dynamic. I also experienced my relationship with my family changing. When I lived at home, it was simple. I didn't have to worry about how often I saw them or whether we talked enough. And working on my relationship wasn't even something that really crossed my mind when it came to my immediate family. But as I became more and more independent and didn't live at home, I slowly realized that I had to start approaching these relationships with more intention. So taking the initiative to reach out, making time for conversation, and also allowing myself to be more vulnerable in those conversations. And I've seen clear, healthy growth in my relationships because of those things. I do think a good place to start looking for community in your life is to strengthen the relationships you already have, whether that's family relationships or friend relationships. But I also know that everyone's situation with family and friendship looks different, and many of us also don't even live near those people. So I wanted to just offer some practical advice for finding community. One of the most obvious ways is to join groups with shared interests. You can also get really niche with this. It could be a sports team. It could be a D&D group. It could be a dance class. My fiance and I have started going to English country dancing. It's a group that meets every week, and we've been having a great time with that. Super niche, super fun. Other places to find community: book clubs, poetry nights, the list goes on. You could also volunteer somewhere, like at an animal shelter, food pantry, or a nursing home, or a national or state park. And again, the list goes on. Of course, you can also start your own community. I recently discovered this Instagram account called The Offline Club, and their goal is to get people to unplug and connect in real life. And they host offline events and digital detox hangouts. And unfortunately, they're actually in a completely different country than me. But of course, if I wanted to start something like that here, I totally could. But I just bring that up as one example of someone starting a community. The options here are endless. Just find something that you enjoy doing that maybe others in your area would also enjoy doing, and create that space. I don't mean to make this sound easy. I know that people come from so many different backgrounds, and some have a harder time trusting and connecting with others. I don't have all the answers, of course, but I do want to be sensitive to the many different types of people that may be watching this video. And if anybody has any more specific advice surrounding this issue, please feel free to leave it in the comments. In general, I would say that developing relationships and community involves being the one to reach out, making the time to build and deepen the connection, and allowing vulnerability. I recently watched a great video by the channel Olis Sunvia. Olivia makes videos about philosophy, social science research, media, and Gen Z trends. And yes, I did get all that from her channel description. And the video I watched was called Self-Centeredness is Not Self-Care: Losing the Human Face Online. Now, this video brought up so many interesting points. I've watched it 2 or 3 times, and I'm going to go over some of my notes from it, but I'm definitely not going to be able to get close to doing it justice, so I highly recommend a watch. She compares the views of 2 different philosophers. The German philosopher Hegel theorized that anytime 2 conscious beings or 2 selves come into contact, there is a fundamental feeling of opposition, because just by existing, those 2 selves limit each other's freedom. However, another philosopher, Emmanuel Levinas, took a more charitable view of our interactions with others, and instead said that when we come into contact with another conscious being, we instinctively care for them, or are scared for them even, because we recognize that simply by having free will, we have the ability to hurt the other person. He stated that the first word of the face is "thou shalt not kill." So essentially, his view was that we are innately responsible for others simply because we exist alongside them. Olivia went on in this video to describe how social media dims our natural ethical responsibility felt towards others because the face is gone, and instead it's just replaced by this 2-dimensional representation of a face that feels a lot less vulnerable and therefore sparks less empathy from the viewer. I think a big reason why we feel less connected to people these days is because real-life connections have often been replaced by online connections. We're more busy and independent than ever, and we keep tabs on people, huge amounts of people by scrolling through our feeds instead of making time to call the handful of people that we're actually close to. And even in real life connections that we do keep up with, I think we tend to let the superficiality of the online world kind of bleed into that, and we start to see people as labels and two-dimensional beings. And I think this actually ties in to something that I heard recently at a presentation about the author Wendell Berry. I don't know if this is directly taken from one of his writings or if this is just the speaker's interpretation of Wendell's views, but he did talk about how in our individualistic society, we tend to disconnect ourselves from others and begin to characterize them by generalities, such as single mother, young black male, old white male, college graduate, and these labels, we can't love labels. Thus, knowing other people only by labels serves to dehumanize them. We may fight hard for equality, which is a good thing to fight for, and yet equality isn't enough because equality is not the same as relationship. From what I understand, and I've only just begun digging into his work a little bit, but Wendell Berry is a farmer who lives in a small rural town and writes about people who live in a small rural town and who have a close community within that town. He uses the term membership to describe that community in which people recognize their place among and their responsibility for all other living beings and organisms within that geographical place. Now, most of us are far removed from that kind of world. A lot of people watching probably aren't farmers. Some of us live in cities. We grew up with internet and social media, and yet we can still take steps to realize that kind of community in our own lives. A healthy community is cultivated by us taking responsibility for its health. Wendell Berry emphasizes the importance of looking at our region as not just material for our use, but as a place to work for and protect. He also argues that big problems don't get solved by big solutions, but instead, big problems get solved by hundreds of people accepting local responsibilities for small solutions. So don't get overwhelmed by looking at the big picture and seeing the poor state of community in our world today. Look instead at the lives around you that you can impact, and realize that changing even one life is not insignificant. I recently talked with a lady that told me a story that demonstrates very well this idea of focusing on the lives around you instead of getting overwhelmed by the big problem. She's part of a WhatsApp group chat that is involved in charity work, and she has been for a while. And one of the members of that chat is a Palestinian man whom she had briefly talked with from time to time, but beyond that, they didn't really have much of a connection. However, after the October 7 Hamas attack and through all the horrors that came after it in his region, she started regularly reaching out to him to see if he and his family were okay. And this lady is a Christian, so she would pray for him and she would get others to pray for him regularly. But then at a certain point, she asked him if sending money would help. And because food is so expensive right now with the war going on, he said that it would. So she started sending whatever she could afford, $50 here, $100 there. And to make a long story short, because we were on the phone for like 50 minutes, more and more people heard about what she was doing and donated money to her to send to him. And she sends money regularly, both her money and other donations. And she told me that at this point, they've sent about $12,000 to $13,000 in total. And throughout the whole journey, she says she's seen God provide in many ways. And so her genuine, though small, initial effort to care for her community, the people who are entrusted to her, ended up being multiplied immensely. And this is only one side of the story, because the people that she's been sending money to have been using it to care for their own local community as well. They've been able to buy food, whatever's available, whenever it is available, and feed hundreds of people. She said that at one time it was even 600 people. And again, all she did was start by sending her own money to one man and his family, caring about and taking responsibility for the people in her circle. In his talk called Health is Membership, Wendell Berry says he believes that the community is the smallest unit of health, and that to speak of the health of an isolated individual is a contradiction in terms. Even as someone who has grown up in a culture of individualism, I can see this truth play out in my own life. My community is spread across the states and even the world, Passionfroot, unlike the membership in Wendell Berry's stories. And I don't really know most of my neighbors, which is maybe something I should try to change. But I do have community in my life with all its beauty and its imperfections, and it's mine to take responsibility for and cultivate. And I encourage you to do the same. I hope you enjoyed this video essay. It actually felt really good to take all these thoughts and just floating around my head and put them together in an organized way. Like I said, the idea of community has been heavy on my mind recently, and it's something I want to take a step to be more intentional about. So I may be updating you along the way. I had a lot of fun working with this type of video format, though I definitely hope I get faster at script writing, because this script in front of me took a very long time to make. Thank you for bearing with me with my allergies. I think they've gotten a little bit worse throughout the video, but that's okay. We got through it. I am extremely interested in hearing your own stories about community, so please let me know what your journey of finding and cultivating community has been like in the comments below. And also don't forget to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. And if you're new to the Passionfroot community, we are a group of creatives who are pursuing purpose and growth in our lives and sharing that journey through all its ups and downs. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, please do subscribe. And you can also find us posting regularly on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. We do plan to do a group video on this topic of community later this year, specifically finding community in your 20s. We do have a 30-year-old on this team, but we'll let him join the discussion. He can actually probably give us a lot of wisdom, having gone through his 20s. So definitely stay tuned for that video. It's going to be really fun. Let's keep growing together, and we will be back with a new video next week. Goodbye! Thank you.